Did GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah just leak the Minnesota Vikings plans for the 2024 NFL Draft? What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and we got a fun show planned for you guys today. We're going to be going over countless quotes from Kwesi's press conference that he just had a couple of hours ago. He dove into it all. He was talking trading up. He was talking quarterback draft prospects. He was even talking the possibility of the Vikings staying put at picks 11 and 23 and drafting BPA. It's a fun show, a lot of quotes. It may be a little longer, so stay with us. But before we dive into that, guys, I want to make sure you are all subscribed here to the channel. With the NFL Draft around only 2.5 weeks away, there is no better time to stay up to date on the latest around your Minnesota Vikings. And plus, we are in a sub battle right now with our Saints Now channel, and they have about a 2,000 sub lead on us. So if you guys are new here and haven't hit that sub button already and just want to help me out, it's been an absolute grind lately, following what the Vikings are planning on doing in the 2024 NFL Draft. So if you guys want to help me out, hit that sub button right now. Let's kick it off with probably the most important quote from Kwesi's press conference when he was talking about the 2024 QB class. As he says this: there's multiple guys that we're in love with just as an outright basis. But there's also other guys that we're in love with, given what if we get them at a certain value, what they'd also be able to come with. As I talked about earlier, skill set wise, if you're talking about the ability to overcome context, well, if the guy has a less ability, but we have assets to get somebody that's going to put him in the situation, those things add up too. And my takeaway from this was the Vikings have options. They got guys that they're in love with, where they would trade up into the top three, maybe like a Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, but also I think there's other guys, like a Michael Penix, or maybe even a Spencer Rattler in round 3 that Kwesi's more than okay with as well. He said at certain value, other quarterbacks he will fall in love with. But I think these are the potential quarterbacks that could be QB1 or QB2 next year for Minnesota. I think the number one choice for me, and the most likely choice, is J.J. McCarthy. But then you got Drake May, Jayden Daniels, even a guy like Michael Penix or Bo Nix if the Vikings want to stay put at picks 11 or 23. But I want to talk about Spencer Rattler here really quickly because Kwesi did have an interesting quote when he said there are multiple guys that we're in love with on an outright basis, but there's also other guys that we're in love with given what they would have at a certain value. Well, right now, Spencer Rattler is supposed to be a 3rd or 4th round pick. Well, if the Vikings love him at that value, I could see them going BPA at 11, BPA at 23, and then targeting their quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round. Obviously, Vikings don't have a 3rd round pick, but maybe they could trade up and get him. Now I want to talk about what Kwesi had to say on roster building. As he said, there's multiple options. He says, I don't think you want to necessarily go take these huge swings and not be able to build a team around him. You'll be different, but still not in the place you want to be. So I think that's kind of how we look at that decision. And, my take after hearing this was I thought about the last Super Bowl. Kansas City Chiefs versus the San Francisco 49ers. You had the Kansas City Chiefs with possibly the greatest quarterback of all time in Patrick Mahomes, and that's how they built their roster. But then you also got the Niners, for example, where they don't have a superstar quarterback in Brock Purdy, but they have a complete team around him. And I think that's what Kwesi was trying to get at, was there's multiple avenues to go about this. I think the fans obviously want the no-doubt home run franchise quarterback that can put the team on their back and win you games. But you could also just get a complete team around a QB and just have a serviceable quarterback, and you can win games that way as well. But now, what does Cam think of the process? This is the first time in Cam's career where he has been evaluating a high-level quarterback. So what does he think? Well, this is what he had to say. He says, I think a lot of people who were involved in that process would tell you this was something new to all of them. And I would add myself in that regard. Since we got here, Kevin's really been adamant about when you select a quarterback, it's a marriage. It's that serious. And that level of commitment and work that should go into that. He also said, and so some of my thoughts, the things I talked about with interviewing and different things like that, and maybe how we measure and process things. Those are kind of some of my inputs. But Kevin's been really a big driver of this process, and having completed it, I completely see why, and it's been a great value. And I love this, that Kevin O'Connell is kind of driving the ship. That's what I took away from that quote, was that Kwesi kind of admitted, I'm new to this process. Other members of the Vikings front office are new as well, but Kevin O'Connell's seen it. He's been through it. He's actually been a quarterback himself dating back to the early 2000s, going through this same process. So I like that they're almost kind of giving their kind of nod to Kevin O'Connell, and it's kind of starting to sound like maybe he will have the final decision on the quarterback that the Minnesota Vikings could be potentially trading up and drafting. But speaking of trading up, Kwesi also had this to say. He says, just because something's risky doesn't mean you have to stay away from it. You know what the rewards are, right? And that's something you have to weigh and measure. You can't look at these decisions in a vacuum. You look at the whole portfolio of decisions that go around it and the things you have to do. And all I got to say is this: no risk it, no biscuit for the Minnesota Vikings. Like, I really do believe they have gave, whatever rookie quarterback it may be, a great landing spot and a great support system. I already think they have more of a complete roster than a lot of people think. So if you go add a rookie quarterback into this team, I think he's going to be able to be. I think he's going to be able to flourish, and I think he's going to be able to be supported in Minnesota. So KOC, Cam, go get your guy if you have your eyes set on one specific player, and trust me, it will all end up working out. But coming up next, what are Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah looking for on the football field? We'll be diving into that here in a second, but I want to get you guys involved in on today's show. Who do you think is the Vikings' number one QB in this year's class? Obviously not named Caleb Williams. Who do you think the Vikings are planning on drafting this year? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. And we'll get to more quotes from Kwesi here in a second, but first I want to give a big-time shout-out to today's sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. If you guys download the Prize Picks app and enter promo code CLNS when you're making your first deposit, hey, we're going to match it up to $100. What is Prize Picks? Well, it's daily fantasy sports. And how do you play? You pick two or more players, and then you choose more than or less than on some stat projections, and you guys can start seeing the cash roll in today. Even though the NFL season is not here anymore, the action on the hardwood is just heating up. We actually just got note that Minnesota Timberwolves center Karl-Anthony Towns will be returning to the lineup this Friday. So maybe you want to take the more on Cat's points. But if you do want to do that, make sure you guys do it at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app, use the promo code CLNS, and we're going to match your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks, it's easy. All you do is pick more than or pick less than on some stat projections, and you guys can start seeing the cash roll in today. I'll put that link for you guys in the comment section and description of today's show. So Kwesi also talked about going through the quarterback workouts, because we did get a report that the Vikings have worked out 4 of the 6 top quarterbacks, not Caleb Williams or Jayden Daniels, but they do have already a private meeting set up with Jayden Daniels. But he's had this to say. He says, we can't simulate a pocket and different things like that, but we can simulate what it is like to be in a classroom environment. We can simulate what it's like to maybe give a coaching point and see how they respond to it and different things like that. And the light bulb just went off on my head when I heard that. I thought about J.J. McCarthy immediately. When you're talking about a QB who is in the classroom and maybe at the top of his class, I don't think there would be a better quarterback than McCarthy. And actually, Peter Schrager seconded my thoughts. He had this report following the NFL Scouting Combine where he said J.J. McCarthy, according to NFL scouts, was by far the best quarterback at the whiteboard. It makes a whole lot of sense. The winning part of his game, the intangibles, it makes sense that McCarthy would be elite at the whiteboard. But more from Kwesi on the quarterback workout process. This is a longer one, so stay with me. He says, we're looking for the nuance of that dynamic, knowing that we're going to lean on the film and hundreds of snaps that we watched on the rest of it. So that's what we try and gain from those interactions. And it's great to see people, one after the other, to compare to see what they're like. And I think the great thing about our building is we have an appreciation for players and people that they get to different answers. They don't get to the same answer the same way. He also said one person might be a little bit more advanced, maybe because they came from a pro system. But you look at the underlying process underneath and see how they learn, how they respond, how they get to answers. That's a really cool thing to see up close as well. And I love that answer from Kwesi. You know, when I heard that, I was just like, that's what I would think. That's how I would handle it. Like, that really makes a whole lot of sense. Is you want to see these quarterbacks when they're in the classroom, in front of the whiteboard, how their brain works, what their process is like. And it seems like Kwesi appreciates that as well. But now let's talk about how much does environment matter to Kwesi, because we have talked about this countless times on the channel. If I had to pick the second best quarterback in the class, it would be whoever the Vikings select because of the support system and the environment that the Minnesota Vikings would offer him. Well, this is what he had to say. He says, I think the last couple of years, obviously it's out there, the results of the quarterbacks that were drafted and different things like that. I think we look at those things and we obviously honor them and respect them. But we also look at the environment. And are we setting the person up to succeed? So when we talk about these players, it's not just about how good are they. It's how do we get the best version of themselves if they were to come to the Minnesota Vikings. We set up plans before they walk in a building. And, man, I'm just getting fired up reading these quotes right now because Kwesi seems, so locked in and so dialed into this draft process. And the Vikings, no doubt, already offer a great landing spot for a rookie quarterback because of that man on screen right there, Justin Jefferson, the best non-quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, just to be able to throw the ball to 18, Addison, Hockenson, you got the 2 tackles. We've said it countless times here on the channel, but I really do believe that the Minnesota Vikings have the best landing spot for a rookie quarterback by far this season, and it's just going to come down to who Minnesota decides to draft. But I want to get you guys' thoughts to round out today's show. What is your biggest takeaway from today's video? Hearing all those quotes from Kwesi, what was your number one takeaway? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. To conclude, though, my biggest takeaway was I love the way Kwesi's handled this offseason, and I trust whatever he plans on doing. If they want to stay at 11-23, that's cool with me. If they want to trade up and get their guy, that's cool with me as well, because they have done more scouting, more studying than probably any of us ever even dreamed about doing. So I just trust what they're going to do. Just hearing their process, hearing the way they're going about it, it's honestly just firing me the hell up. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching today's show. A little insight on what Kwesi is planning on doing in the NFL draft. So if you guys want to stay up to date on the latest around your Vikings and more, hit that subscribe button, lock us in, and we'll see y'all next time. SKOL Vikes.